Welcome back, everybody, to Outback Motorsports. Today, we're going to talk about carburetors, specifically the Weber IDF or IDF style carburetor. This carburetor's been around a long time, it's had a lot of uses, and it's super popular in the Volkswagen world. And the best thing to know about it is it's almost completely universal as far as so many different engines that it works on. So let's dig in a little bit about specifically what the different parts of it are, some adjustments to be made whenever you buy one, things like that. We're not going to go super deep dive on this video. We'll shoot some more later on that may go into like setting up dual carburetors and things like that. But let's find out exactly what we're working with here when we're talking about an IDF style carburetor, the different sizes. This happens to be a Weber clone that you can buy online, what have you, but the basics of it all is going to be exactly the same. We've got, it's a 2-barrel carburetor, so 2 throats of the carburetor. This one happens to be a 40, or what we call a 40 millimeter. And when we talk about the size of the carburetor being a 40 or a 44 or a 48, that is based on the size of the butterflies. This is a great size carburetor in a single application for a 1600, 1776, 1835. Even a mild 1915 could still run on a 40 millimeter carburetor. We typically start to look at bigger carburetors like a 44 when we start talking about that 1915 and bigger when we're talking about a single. Duals is a different story. So that being said, let's dig into this one just a little bit. I've gone ahead and taken the liberty of taking the velocity stacks off of it and the screws out of the top so that we can lift the top plate off. So if you've just unboxed your new carburetor or carburetor set, and you want to make sure you've got it all ready to go on your engine before you put it on, the first thing you want to do is you want to take it apart. And the reason being is even though it's brand new, it's going to need to have some cleaning done inside just to double check that there's nothing blocking any passages. There's some really small passages in here. So let's take the top off of this carburetor. We'll lift it straight off the jet stack and flip this upside down. And here we find the float. This is something that's going to need to be adjusted. Underneath it is the needle and seat. And of course, they're inside of this little channel right here. There's a small filter that's like a pre-filter to keep dirt out, or at least assist in doing so. When we talk about setting the float level, if we can get a good shot of it here, you can notice that the float, it kind of moves back and forth, but it can actually come up further. We don't want to do that. What we want to, when we want to measure float level, we're measuring it from the top of this float to the bottom of this body, and we would adjust that by bending this little tab. So if I need that float level to come up, then I would take a pair of needle nose pliers or something and bend this tab up so that that float could fall that direction just a little bit further. Just the opposite, if the float level was too high, I would bend that tab down, and that wouldn't allow the float to come up quite so high. So that's one setting we would definitely want to make whenever we're unboxing our new carburetors. Inside, we're looking for, even though it looks really clean in here, and this carburetor did actually come in very clean, but one of the things we do is we want to blast maybe some brake cleaner, carburetor cleaner in here for any residue that might be left behind whenever they're flow testing them or when they're machining them, and then blow that out with compressed air as well. While I've got it open here, I'll go ahead and show inside. We have a accelerator pump diverter jet. And what that jet does is it actually diverts some of the accelerator pump shot when you first hit the throttle, and it squirts fuel. That first shot down there, depending on what size hole is in that, will determine what percentage it actually receives. It can receive 30%, 55%, or 100%, depending on whether that's got a hole in it or not. And that's going to be applicable to different situations, different motors. While I've got this apart, we'll go ahead and take off the top, take out one of these jet stacks, and take a little closer look at what we're looking at on these before we go to the side of the carburetor. In the jet stack, we have multiple pieces. We have the jet holder, which is the top part here that simply just holds the jet stack together. And sometimes these are really tight. So I'll pull this one apart so we can take a closer look at what's underneath. Underneath the jet stack, we find the air corrector, the emulsion tube itself, and then here's our main jet. The air corrector its job is to control and dilute the amount of fuel delivered by the main jet during basically wide open throttle use. The tube right here that we call, this one happens to be, see if I can see the number on it, an F11. This emulsion tube, the emulsion tube's job is to transition between the idle circuit and the main circuit. The different emulsion tubes will determine how soon the main circuit comes in and at what degree, like what percentage of fuel it'll start bringing in. And then, of course, the main jet itself, with the size stamped on the side of it, it will determine how much fuel the main circuit is given. Now, we've got our new carburetor here, and we're wanting to get it set up to put on our new engine. We've cleaned out the inside of the bowl. We've taken the jet stacks apart and blown through them with compressed air and carb cleaner. It's a good idea to remove the idle jets. You'll find these right here. I'll pull one of them out real quick. Now, these little guys are really notorious on these carburetors for getting plugged up, especially off-road guys, but even street cars we'll get these plugged up from time to time. The jet holder itself is this little bitty guy here, but the idle jet itself is not very large, and the hole in the end of it is even smaller. So it's really easy for that to get caught up with any kind of dirt or debris that might find its way in the carburetor. They do make things called jet doctors, and the MPHPMX carburetors come with factory jet doctors in them that basically are designed to help eliminate or at least prevent dirt from getting in there, but it can still happen. So with that out, we can take off our accelerator pump. We can take these 4 screws out, pop this diaphragm out. There's a spring underneath there. A couple holes inside there. One transfers fuel into the accelerator pump. The other one shoots the fuel back out whenever the accelerator is pumped. See the movement there, and it will shoot the fuel through those squirters. This is the idle mixture screw. If I'm setting my carburetor up for initial start for the first time, I'm probably going to set this about 1.5 turns out from fully seated, and that being like this. I would take the screws and I would screw them all the way in, but do not crank them down. You will destroy the needle in the seat that's in there just until you feel it touch, and then stop. That's seated. Then I would go 1.5, 1.5. That's a good starting point. That does not mean that's where it's going to live at. That's just a good starting point to start with. On the outside here, these are air bleeds, and for the time being, we're going to leave these closed. They've got a lock nut on the outside, and they're a needle themselves that seat in there. We'll leave them closed for this application, and for most applications, they would be closed. They are used for some fine-tuning at times. And then lastly, we've got our idle speed. Obviously, whenever we crank this in, that turns up the idle speed because we're opening up the butterflies. Good idea if we're using this on a single center mount Volkswagen, just using a single carburetor. It's probably a good idea for initial startup to set your idle speed at 1 turn from seated or less. Probably no more than 1 turn. And when I say that, if we can zoom in real quick, you're going to see me turn this thing until you start seeing the throttle arm move. Put my finger up here so you can kind of see it as a reference. Just makes touch with it. Once it touches, we'll go, there's a 1/2 turn, let's say 3/4 of a turn. There's a good starting point to fire the engine up. Obviously, once it gets running and warmed up and at full operating temperature, then adjustments can be made from there. Some key things to remember when it comes to diagnosing issues with these carburetors is dirt is your enemy. First and foremost, make sure you've got a good fuel filter on there, because without it, you are going to run into constantly fighting the issue of plugged up idle jets. You'll know it immediately. It'll start popping and banging and carrying on when it was just running just fine. It just won't run good, because remember, the idle circuit is really what's controlling all the way up to about 2,500 RPM. That's whenever it starts transitioning to the main circuit, roughly about there on most engines. So that idle circuit's really important for everything from idle up to about there. After that point, the main circuit kind of starts to take over. And if you've got upper end issues, then you probably wouldn't have problems with your idle jets, probably more in the main circuit. But keeping it clean is really, really important. The other part that's really important is making sure that it's sealed good. So obviously good base gaskets. Make sure it's bolted down good and solid. No issues there. making sure that you've got a good air filter on it. All these things keep it clean inside, and really play along in how long it's actually going to last for you. The performance of this carburetor is phenomenal. They work really well on, like I said, a lot of different applications. So if you've taken the time to prep the carburetor before you put it on by cleaning it, adjusting it, those kind of things, you're going to get a lot of life out of it. Once the carburetor's on, you've got it up and running. Now it's going to be time to start setting some adjustments. And I'm just going to go over a couple adjustments. We'll do a whole nother video on carb tuning, but your basic adjustments, after I said like your idle speed, once the engine's at operating temperature, get your idle speed pretty close to where you want it to be. Say it's 900 RPM, get it set at about 900 RPM, and then we'll start tuning from there. And the additional tuning we'll start with is we'll move the idle mixture screws in. That's leaning them out. As I screw that in, that actually leans out the idle circuit. And if I see my RPM come up, I'm going to screw that in until it gets to the maximum RPM that it's running at, or starts to stumble. Same thing with coming out with it. If I come out with it, I'm richening it up, and it's going to start to stumble if I go too far. So if I've got it screwed way in where it's almost seated, or just barely off of seat, well, then I've got too big of an idle jet. I've had to lean it way out to get best idle. So that means my idle jet's too big, and I need to jet it down. If I have to screw it way out to get it to run, then my idle jet's probably too small, and I need to go up in idle jet. That's a really good kind of rule of thumb to know whenever it comes to basic tuning on these. That's usually the majority of the basic tuning that you're going to do is your idle mixture and your idle speed. There is a couple of little plugs here and here that we didn't talk about. Those are basically just plugs off of manifold vacuum ports. If you had that thread size of a nipple, you could actually screw them in there and hook them to a vacuum gauge and then tune each one individually per cylinder. Most people don't have that, so that's why we don't really go deep into that portion of it. But once you've got the idle speed and idle mixture screws set, you can drive it, feel that if it feels like it has a good pull through the entire range of RPMs. If it does, then your main jetting is probably pretty close to where it needs to be. If it feels like it falls flat when it comes into the main circuit, so above 3,000 RPM, and it just kind of doesn't seem to accelerate, doesn't seem to do much, then your jetting is probably off on the main side. And again, here at Outback, we've got all the idle jets, main jets, emulsion tubes, air correctors, all that kind of stuff to help you out with getting your carburetor tuned in for what you need. And lastly, I probably want to mention is, yes, you can buy these carburetors pretty much anywhere. You have that option of you can buy them online, you can buy them in different stores. Anybody can sell you carburetors. But when you come to a place like Outback, you've got knowledge of people who tune on them every single day. And we're more than happy to help you do that, try to help walk you through it so you're not just buying a multitude of jetting that you don't need and those kind of things. We can talk through what you're working on, or we've got a full line service in the back where we can tune it for you. So next time you're in the market for carburation, give us a holler. We'll get you set up.